Thank you, Lynn. And I think at this time what I'd like to do is first draw attention to who is my co-presenter here. Jason Morgan is on the call from TCP, also along with Lynn. Thank you very much, folks. Yes. And I want to inform you folks that the purpose for today's call and the webinar is to allow registrants an opportunity to hear from the city as well as the Common Pool, our resident contest experts, about the next steps in the SG2 Hartford Challenge, particularly what to expect during and after submitting your Phase 1 proposal. We also want to give you an opportunity to ask questions to clarify anything that you may be thinking. And so with that, I'd like to invite Jason to the conversation. Jason, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. So as Stephen has mentioned, Lynn, can you please mute Kenneth Benton? I think he's the one. There you go. So as Stephen has mentioned, this webinar is designed to inform the registrants to Hartford's SG2 Challenge about the proposal instructions for Phase 1 of this competition. Since all of you on this call are registrants, each of you has already received 2 emails from Stephen's office. The first included a PDF file which walked through the proposal instructions in a written format. The second email from Stephen's office provided a link to an instructional video which walked you through the proposal instructions. And since all of you are registrants, you can now, and for the rest of the competition, go to our discussion forums in order to access that same video which Lynn is about to walk you through now. So you would, as a registrant, you would go to About, you would go to Forums, you would then click on the Help Forum Topic thread, you would scroll down and click on the Submissions thread, and there you would click on the second posting, whereby you would be able to access the video, which will be a walkthrough of much of what I'm about to say. So if any of you have forgotten any of the notes from today's meeting or would like to revisit the video, you don't have to dig through your email box and find it. You can find it on the forums under the topic of help and the subtopic of submissions, the second posting. So Lynn, if you could please go back to the main landing page. What I'm about to describe for you is already available in a written format on the main website. Even for those people that have not registered, they can go to the About item in the main menu. They can mouse over Develop Your Proposal, and they can go to Economic Development Proposal Instructions. And there you can read what is required of any of the registered participants to complete their submission. So I'm going to read through a script which is available in the video, and while I'm going through this script, you can enter your questions in the chat portion of this webinar, and we'll get back to those questions at the close of the presentation. But your economic development proposal is an attempt to establish Hartford as the city for entrepreneurs, addressing the ways of leveraging the city's existing resources and identifying necessary new or enhanced resources. The winning proposal should include 5 preliminary components, which are listed on the website, and they are: 1, the sustainability and operational plans of your proposal; 2, a budget with sources and uses of both public and private investment; 3, plans for recruitment and branding or marketing; 4, curriculum for technical capacity programming; and 5, designs for infrastructure and equipment. So you need to be sure that your proposal meets the proposal requirements. If it is not complete or does not meet certain requirements, it may be permanently set aside during the submission screening phase and never be judged. We've already shown you where you can review the proposal instructions through the About menu and or Develop Your Proposal. But once you've arrived at those instructions, it's important for you to look at the 2 sections and how those sections should be completed. So Lynn, if you could scroll down to section 1, we can then point to the elements that I'm about to describe. In section 1, you are asked to submit a 5-page paper, which is your executive summary. Your executive summary needs to cover major points and include a specific project which is representative of your overall strategic approach for economic development in Hartford. Those four elements, which are listed here, begin with: you need to demonstrate that you have investigated regional and local economic development conditions in and around the city of Hartford. Number 2, you need to provide a broad but compelling description of your general economic development strategy. Number 3, you need to outline a proposed project that best embodies your strategic approach. This proposed project is a critical element of your submission, and it should cover 3 subpoints. First, it should be specific. You have to describe a projected return on investment for the city of Hartford and focus on why the project may represent other related proposed activity. Next, you need to be accountable. So identify further development needs and offer a way to solve any outstanding issues. Last, you need to be bold. So don't be afraid of new or inventive ideas as long as they're rooted in sound economic principles and are an understanding of related risks. The 4th item in the executive summary is that you need to select the measure of your success. Whether you're measuring job creation or some other return on investment, be as quantifiable as you can be. Each of the completed applications which meets the requirements will be assessed by 5 judges. Those judges' identities are available on the website for you to review. When those judges are looking at your proposal, the first thing that they're going to read is your 5-page executive summary. So your best approach is to create a 5-page executive summary that doesn't go too deep, but that is compelling enough so that when the judges are reading your assumptions or reading your claims, they're going to feel compelled to go back and read deeper when you get into Section 2. Section 2 is the full body of your economic development proposal. You have to submit a paper of no more than 25 pages. Here, you cite references in the executive summary and provide those deeper explanations. Your second section, your 25 pages, should cover 6 points. I'm going to go through each of those points now. First, identify your multidisciplinary team members. Those team members do not have to be subject matter experts in economic development. It's okay to represent people who do not have a seasoned track record in that field, but you should, in fact, show a broad diversity of expertise and range of experience, and we look forward to learning more about who you are. Number 2, publish your detailed analysis of regional and local economic conditions and trends. This is very important to the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration, that they should understand how your strategy fits into the larger strategy for the general area that Hartford is within. Number 3, declare your broad strategic approach, including a justification and reasoning for using your proposed tactics. Number 4, describe your project in detail. Here, you have to include 2 elements that are: include a description of the resources required to advance your project. You must include draft budgets and explanations for any assumed expenses or other implied costs. Number 2, you have to explain how the project will generate net benefits. At what point will the investment pay off for the city, how and when? So while you've covered it more broadly in the executive summary, in the second section you need to get more specific about your proposed project. The 5th element of the second section is you have to measure or project any intended outcomes. So how will the overall proposal impact industries and occupations, either growing or declining in Hartford, and why? Next, what is the net impact on job creation and retention, and why? Next, where will your proposal have the greatest impact within the city of Hartford, and why? Next, when will the proposal generate a positive impact on the city, and why? And last, consider how the proposal will utilize the strengths or help resolve the conditions of surrounding local and regional economies. The very last element of your second section of your proposal is you have to conclude with your most ambitious view for the city of Hartford and why your strategic approach is critical to realizing that vision. Once you've concluded the first 2 sections, you will then have the option of creating a video presentation. And that video presentation should be no less than 2 minutes, but no more than 5 minutes in length. Those are the 3 elements of the proposal. Now, Lynn, I'm going to ask you to go to the submission screen, which each registered team will have to use in order to upload your application. So as you can see here, there are multiple elements of the submission screen. The first is that you have to list your multidisciplinary team. Now there are two types of teams. The first type is a group of registrants who come together in order to create a team. You need to list each of those team members. If you are a team of individuals, you have to only list here other registrants. You may have informal advisors, you may have friends and neighbors who have helped inform your application, but to list the actual team members from a group of individuals, the only people that should be listed in this first box are other registrants. The other team type is a corporation or a not-for-profit organization that may have formed as a corporation or not-for-profit organization. Here, you can list other registrants who have become part of that team, and you could also list employees of those organizations. Those employees do not have to be registrants. You can list employees in your multidisciplinary team of organizations that have registered. So that's what you would do to complete this first box. The next box is you have to provide a primary point of contact from your multidisciplinary team. You then have to go on to provide that primary point of contact's phone number, email address, and the legal mailing address of that primary point of contact. Then if you could scroll down. The next two sections require you to upload a PDF file, first of your 5-page executive summary, and next of your maximum 25-page economic development proposal. You will create those PDF files and you will upload them using this screen. Your last and optional element is the video presentation. And here the instructions require you to upload your video presentation to YouTube and then to post your YouTube video ID here in this last box on the screen. Now, some of you may have already used this screen in order to upload elements of your proposal. It's important for you to note that in the upper right-hand corner here, you can see that there is a Save button. And that Save button, you have to click on that Save button in order to save your last version. If you do not click on that Save button, the system will only recognize the last copy that was saved. So you need to click Save every time you upload new information in order to replace the previous saved information. So we encourage you to review the Economic Development Proposal instructions and to spend time on the proposal submission screen here. These instructions are essential to a quality proposal submission. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Stephen so he can cover any other points which I may have missed and to walk you through any of the other important points in this process. And then we'll begin to take questions. And again, please enter your questions in the chat functionality of the webinar.
Thank you, Jason. You know, the only other thing I'd like to add, you did a great job, I think, covering the basics. With regard to the elements that you read off, those were guidelines largely that the city and TCP and EDA came up with to help you when you were structuring your proposal, because really there's two things that we want you to be mindful of: sustainability and feasibility. Some of you who have attended the presentations in the past may be familiar with that and heard me say it before. Your idea may take 20 years and $20 million, and that's okay as long as it is sustainable and feasible, and how you demonstrate that is entirely up to you. And those guidelines that we place there are just ways for you to things for you to keep in mind while drafting your plan for what might demonstrate sustainability and feasibility. I did notice some questions coming through. Lynn, how do you want to handle the questions? Do we read the questions off and then answer them? Or?
I will just work my way through the list here as they come in, and I'll speak them out loud, and then whoever is the most appropriate to answer, you know, whether that's you, Stephen, or Jason, can take a crack at the answer.
Lynn, absolutely, and I just want to mention that too, that one of the reasons we're doing this is because we do have the EDA and TCP coming to town on the 18th. This is an opportunity for us to know ahead of that time what questions you have. We may not have the answers for you right now. We will follow up, however. Lynn, we agreed that on Monday afternoon we'd be able to do that?
Yes.
So any questions that we don't get to today because of time constraints or perhaps we're unable to answer them, we will have answers for registrants, and we will update the website on Monday with those answers. Okay?
All right, so question number one is, are there any format requirements or prohibitions? For example, point size links.
So we don't have any format requirements. We do put restrictions on page numbers. You have 5 minutes or 5 pages for your executive summary, 25 for your core content, and then 3 to 5 minute video optional. What I would recommend is that although there are no requirements on how you submit your material, what's important for you is to convey your thought clearly to the judges and make sure you don't fatigue them. If your font is too small, your paper is too big, that may cause them problems. Jason, these will all be uploaded electronically, but will the judges have the opportunity to print these if they so choose?
Yes, they will.
Do a paper copy? Okay. So
Yes,
I
they
think
will.
that with that in mind, you may want to make certain that whatever you submit is formatted properly to a standard printer. I don't think you'll want the judges tinkering with your margins. So whatever you upload and submit, just make certain that it's already set to print.
All right, the next question is...
Anything to add on to that, Jason?
Well, you know, there is a reference to links in your proposal, and we think those kind of citations or those kind of references are fine, but I wouldn't go too heavy on the links, because if the body of your proposal does not speak for itself, in other words, if your critical assumptions have to rely on someone going to an external website in order to validate your claims, you know, I would try to limit that as much as possible. These documents should be standalone documents. They should reflect a sense of rigor and discipline on your part, and people are going to judge you based upon how easy it is to read and how self-explanatory it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, the next question is if you could please expand on what technical capacity programming means.
How to answer that? Anything that enhances one's technical capacity, whether to start a job, expand his business, get a job. Pretty self-explanatory, I thought. I don't know how much better to explain it. Jason, you want to take a whack at that one?
I think when you're looking at terms like technical capacity, I think that really relates to the proposed project that you're presenting in your proposal. And, you know, what is the technical capacity for the team implementing that project? What is the technical capacity of the project to meet all of the criteria in the rubric? You know, technical capacity, I think, is a term that you see multiple times in the proposal and in the presentations that have been made. And we really want to only underscore that where you're making a specific proposal for a project, or where you're representing larger economic development issues that would impact your proposal or your project, you want to be as specific as possible. And so, you know, if there is a risk, yeah.
No, I was going to say, I see when I received that question, Lynn, my apologies, I received it as though with the end user. So who is your plan benefiting? If you're coming up with a technical capacity program, that might be a curriculum. So if you're an incubator, you might have classes there to enhance one's technical capacity. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, it may not even just be the end user's technical capacity. Telling us what your qualifications are as a team to discuss the things that you're discussing would be helpful, I think, for the judges, that you have the qualifications to be able to address these things. But it doesn't necessarily infer that the technical capacity of the team is incumbent upon helping us implement it. So you may not have the qualifications to assist us or the technical capacity to assist us with implementation, but you may demonstrate your technical capacity to be able to design this plan or this type of infrastructure for economic development.
Okay. The next question is, my understanding was that the proposals would be judged on the 3 judging rubric questions and not the proposal guidelines. Will it be important to...
When they got it all screwed up?
While it will be important to address some of those items to be complete, how will the proposals be judged in conjunction with the discussion of necessary sections?
So, Stephen, I think this is a question for you, but I will say that the 3 judging rubric questions are, in fact, the criteria that the judges are forced to use in order to assess your proposal. However, the judges are also very familiar with the proposal instructions. So they are equally aware, as you are now, that the proposal instructions do ask for specific content, such as your budget and your project plan within your proposal. And so if you were to exclude that, the judges will be very much aware that you have decided not to do something that the proposal instructions require.
Thank you, Jason. I realized that only a couple of moments into my answer did I realize I was on mute. I had a guest swing by my desk, so I muted the phone right quick, and I did not unmute. But yes, that's exactly right. These guidelines that we put out there will help respondents when structuring their. I'm sorry, I'm being distracted. Is someone talking on the phone? If we could all just be mindful of whether or not we're on mute and talking on the phone, having another conversation, that'd be very helpful. Thank you. So with regard to those guidelines, we put those out there to help folks steer their proposals. They're not necessarily something that appear in the rubric, as Jason said, but they're nonetheless something that we want you to be mindful of when structuring your plan, because they may be helpful to give further insight to the judges for the feasibility and sustainability. Those are really key things that folks need to be mindful of when submitting their proposal, is that it's sustainable and feasible. And so those were guidelines really just designed to help folks make sure they address some of those critical elements of feasibility and sustainability.
All right, the next section is, the next question is there flexibility in the structure for sections that seem to overlap? For example, the timeline of net benefits to Hartford is in both section 4B and 5B.
Sure. So this is Jason. So the difference between under this second part, which is the full body of your economic development proposal, there are 6 sections. The 4th and 5th sections have subsections in them. So I think when I believe it's Mary who's asking this question. So Mary, as it relates to 4B, that's asking you to explain how the project will generate net benefits. At what point will the investment pay off for the city, how and when? So this is specific to the project. Whereas in section 5D, so we're talking here about your larger proposal. So you might have an incident. You may have an example where your proposed project has a certain amount of projected outcomes or net benefits to the city, but the project, as represented by as just a case study or an example of the larger proposal. You may include in that the proposed project could scale by 10, 20x, or that if the proposed project was linked to other related activities, general related activities, that the overall proposal would also have a net impact or benefit to the city of Hartford. And so think of it in terms of being very specific about the project within your proposal, but also laying out how the larger proposal might also have a net benefit to the city of Hartford.
All right. Stephen, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, that was great. Well done, Jason. Thank you.
All right. The next question is, can you list the screening requirements again? Are there any more than the 5 listed?
Lynn, can you list the screening requirements again? Are there any more than the 5 listed? So the 5 listed are actually included in the website. And Lynn, you can go there now and show exactly where that appears. And these are kind of overlapping preliminary components for what they're looking for, things that should be contained within your proposal, things that can be covered based upon the critical elements of the first 2 sections that are in the proposal instructions. But if, Lynn, you were to scroll down, you can see that those are listed there under Phase 1. Winning proposals will include the following preliminary components. And so you see all 5 of those are listed there. But again, the notion here is that if you follow the format within the proposal instructions and you're mindful of these 5 things, you'll see that there's a lot of congruency between those 2 directives. So we don't feel like there's any potential conflict or there should be any broad misunderstanding of kind of what those 5 things mean in relation to your proposal instructions.
Steve, anything you'd like to add?
No.
All right, the next question, may we include appendices and would they be included in a 25-page limit?
So the answer to that question is that yes, you can include appendices, but they have to be within the 25-page limit. We've seen in other competitions that people will try and develop workarounds, such as citing, providing web links to other documents, which can be appendices, which can have more narrative content. But again, the document needs to be self-contained within 25 pages. The second section, at least, needs to be self-contained within 25 pages. You really need to think of the second section as the explanation that validates the first section. So while the first section will grab the attention of the judges, it's a 5-page paper that the judges will understand, that stands alone, that is compelling, and that meets all the judging criteria. The second section is there to validate and to provide more detail about the first section. So think of the second section as kind of like what is appended to the first. And if you need to go on and 25 pages isn't enough, it's fine to link sources, but again, that the 25-page paper is self-contained as well.
All right, the next question is, what is the minimum number of judges reviewing each proposal?
So it's not a minimum number. There will be 5 judges assigned to each application which passes the administrative review process. So all of those that complete their application by the deadline of September 22nd, those applications will go before an administrative review body, which are designees of the City of Hartford. And they're going to make sure that every application meets the application requirements. Once we've determined all of those applications that meet the application requirements, they will be distributed out to our judges, whose identities are posted on the website. Each of those completed applications will be reviewed by 5 judges. And the number 5 is important because that is how we are statistically normalizing the review process, which means that for each of those 5 judges, they will provide scores and comments for you. All of their scores will be rolled up, statistically normalized, and the normalized aggregate score will be used to populate the rank order of all of the applications. We actually also publish the normalization algorithm on the website, which you're welcome to go to and read at any time.
All right, and the next question is related to that. Will we get feedback on where our proposals rank in order of their judged score?
So I think that question is for you, Stephen. I don't know if you're on mute.
I was on mute, yep. Will we get, well, actually, Jason, I defer to you. Is that best practices? Do we tell them where they rank at the end of the process? We will certainly identify who the top 6 folks are participating in Phase 2, and you will have access to all of the comments and remarks that the judges leave for each of the submissions. Whether they'll be ranked, however, beyond the 6, I don't know that. Jason, will the system automatically rank them beyond 6?
The system in our standard practice is to provide the rank order of all of the applications that were reviewed and to allow each team to read the scores and comments provided to them by their judges. So the capability is there, and it is up to the City of Hartford in terms of how much of that information they choose to reveal.
Okay. We will share that information with the respondents.
All right, the next question. After we submit our application, do we get an email confirming the submission?
Jason, I think that's a system question. Is an email automatically generated after submission?
Yeah, so an email is not automatically generated. What's important to realize here is that once you have completed the process of saving all of the required fields on the submission screen, and we just walked through those, you have the option again to go back and to resave over that information at any time you want, right up until the deadline. If you choose not to resave right up until the deadline, the last saved version is what will be submitted in the system. And so we prefer not to generate emails to people every time they save a new version of that, because you would be inundated with emails. And so it is your obligation to go to the system, to complete all the required fields, to continue to save and update that right up until the submission deadline of September 22nd, midnight Eastern Standard Time, 2014.
And you answered the next question, which was what time is the deadline on September 22nd? So just to confirm, that's midnight Eastern Standard Time. The next question, are the 6 finalists the 6 highest scoring proposals?
Yes, Jason, unless I'm mistaken, that's how the contest was designed, that the chairperson of the selection committee can determine how many will advance into the phase 2, but the 6 highest proposals will be the ones that we are, or rather those who are advancing into phase 2 are the highest rated proposals.
Yeah, my understanding, and this is a Hartford decision, is that the only determination about how many people go into phase 2 is a determination of the total number, but that number can only be determined on the basis of the rank order, which is generated based on the scores for each of those applications. So yes.
Right. Right. Now, the ambiguity as to whether or not there will be up to 6 teams participating in phase 2 is largely going to be placed on the respondents. If we have 6 really good plans, at least 6 plans, then I imagine at least 6 plans will be advancing. If we don't receive at least 6 good plans, then we will probably not advance someone into the second phase, all 6 folks, if we don't have at least 6 solid plans. Does that make sense, Jason?
Yeah, I think the question here is really, would it be possible to advance someone from round 1 to round 2 who maybe didn't receive a cash award in round 1? And so the answer is yes, that is possible. Would it be possible to advance a certain number from round 1 to round 2, whereby someone who did receive a cash award was not invited to participate in round 2? And that, again, is an option for the city of Hartford.
Right.
So you really want to do your best at submitting your best quality proposal, making the best case for yourself.
Right. Great point.
That's the end of all the questions that have been entered in the chat box. Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to enter before we conclude the webinar? All right, Stephen, I'll turn it back over to you.
Oh, with that, folks, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the webinar. I want to thank very especially Lynn and Jason for joining us from the Common Pool. As I said earlier, we will be joined by the EDA and TCP on September 18th. We'll have an afternoon session. We're still working out the details of that agenda, but we will have an afternoon session, likely at the library, between noon and 1:30. I'll follow up with all of the qualified registrants in the next day or so, just when we clarify some of those details further. With that, I am always available to you. I intentionally left myself away from the judging panel so that I could be a resource to any of the registered teams throughout the process. My email is coles, C-O-L-E-S, 001@hartford.gov. And you can, of course, call our main number at 757-9070. If anyone but me answers, you can certainly ask for me, and they will transfer you immediately to me. With that, folks, thank you so much for taking time today. Lynn, I'm sorry, your parting mark? No, quite right.
Well, we had a couple questions come in at the last minute here. So so we have 2 more questions. Let's go ahead and get them answered. So what if we aren't sure on how to measure return over investments, for example, in the education sector?
Boy, I would probably, you know what, I don't know if it's at all, Jason, do you have any insights? Is it okay for me to work with that team if they have particular questions on how to determine their metrics? Or do you think that would be impropriety?
No, I think it's okay to just clarify your intention. Obviously, we don't want to give any one team a competitive advantage by receiving too much help that would otherwise benefit the other team. So, you know, I mean, in this case, whether you're focused on education or healthcare or job creation, whatever it is, I think what you need to show is that there are benefits that accrue to the city, and those benefits may be things that are harder financial figures, but those things also may be returns that represent social capital, human capital. And it's okay to be quantifiable as it relates to human capital and social capital. You know, the city has invested interest in all of those kind of metrics. And so don't feel like you're restricted to just showing cash return on investment, dollar for dollar. Now, we're aware of the fact that in education, there actually are models where you can show cash return on increased investment in education, and you may want to look into those. But it's also okay to look at social return, social capital, human capital return on those investments, as long as you're quantifiable and as long as you're specific.
Mm-hmm. And
then
coming
one
up with those metrics will be an important part, I think, of demonstrating feasibility, too. I mean, what gets measured gets done. And I think it would be remiss for you to leave it to the judge's imagination to determine what determines success with your idea. So I will make myself available if anybody has any particular questions. I can put you in touch with the Board of Ed as well. Perhaps they would be better suited to assist you with coming up with those econometrics. But to Jason's point, I mean, it really does go a long way, I think, demonstrating that your project, your idea has some legs.
And then one last question. Will we be invited to the EDC meeting?
Yes, as I said, we'll have an afternoon meeting with registrants in the EDA. I think that probably meant EDA. The EDA will be coming to Hartford along with the TCP, and we will have an afternoon session on September 18th, tentatively scheduled right now from noon to 1:30 in the library. That'll be an opportunity to hear some of what we heard here today, but also have interactions personally with the EDA representatives in the City of Hartford.
All right, that looks like that's all our questions.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.